Well, good morning and welcome back to Reviving an Idler. Welcome aboard the Second Haven. Now the Second Haven is a little westerly build keeler. She's 25 foot, Bermudan rig, sort of your usual sort of plastic boat type of style. She has been very generously donated to the cause by Mr. D, so I can't thank you enough for this very generous gift, frankly. I'm blown away by it. She's a little bit of an older boat, but she's in very good condition considering, and she's been donated with the intention that we can get ourselves back on the water, sailing something of a similar size to Idler in preparation for when we actually get her back on the water. So we're really excited about that. Mark, who you've met in an earlier video, and my brother Robert, who you're soon to meet, helping me with some of the roving, is they are both new to sailing. They don't know how to sail, and they are likely to be fairly regular crew aboard Idler in the future. So it's important that we get them kind of versed in what a rope is, what a sail is, and just the simple basic stuff. So we're really excited to have this opportunity to play, to get back out in the water and be a part of it again. So yeah, so I just can't thank you enough, Mr. D. It's a phenomenal gift. So thank you so much from me and the rest of the guys. So we're just along in Ely this morning. We've come along from St Monans, which is where the Second Haven is moored. It's not far, I think it's only about 3 miles along the coast. It's not a long way, but we've come along fairly fresh, calm seas but fresh breeze to pick up the Aunt Agatha. Now the Aunt Agatha, as you've seen in an earlier video, is a little tender dinghy that we built, and she's going to be essential in getting ourselves from the harbour onto the swing mooring. So enough wittering here. I need to get back to harbour, get her in before the tide falls so I can get back to the workshop because I have framing to do today. Yahoo! So we're hitting the ground running today. We've already got the steamer on the go and we are about to start our very first batch install of some of our ribs. So we're looking to get 4 out of this first batch, and then we've got another 2 hot on the heels of that. The sights are already prepped and ready. We've got the ends of our ribs, the feet, already cut to size and oiled with our lead compound. Just about to put some of the pine tar down the inside of the planking as the sort of the bedding compound, and then I've got the screws to fit to the outside of the planking, ready to pull the rib into shape. Fingers crossed that all goes well. Pine tar. Oh, love this stuff. Now, you'll see there's ends of the ribs sticking out of the steamer just now. That is deliberate. I'm leaving a little bit of extra length on our ribs just now. We shouldn't need anything more than up to about there. So we've got a good, what's that, around about 40 centimetres overhang. So if we do end up breaking one on that first tight bend, I've still got some left over to play with, so I can just recut the end and hopefully be able to re-steam that rib back into the boat. So that's the reason we got that off cut. Means we can't use our lovely door, but that's okay. I can live with that. Get some rags stuffed in there and that'll keep the steam and the heat in. Okay, so we're in. +5 additional ribs. Oh, one up forward there as well. Fantastic. So making the plug is our next mission, and I need the grain to be running across them. Like I said in the last video, that is because when the plug swells, it will swell that way, putting more force into the plank, pulling the plank onto the frame, and also not putting a force outwards in that direction and forcing the plank apart. So that's the reason we need the grain to be running that way. That obviously causes us slight issues, as trying to put a blade around this is going to start lifting the grain, so I have to be very careful with that. Luckily, however, I have some of the old planking that I've removed from the boat, which cleans up quite nicely, and most of it is quarter sawn like that, so I don't have to think about laminating up bits of wood to make plugs yet. I can hopefully just use this. Cut out a very rough blank in a rough taper that matches roughly the awl width. And what we'll do is we'll just clean that up as best we can and shrink it down and try and smooth it as much as possible with a plane, and then we'll put it into our cutter and start working around it. It is not a quick process. It is a very time-consuming process, and I'm sure there are better ways of doing it. With the tools I have just now, this is the only thing I can do. As we move forward with the project, in all likelihood, I'll develop a better way of doing that, and I'm sure some of you watching this may have some good ideas as well. I certainly have a few ideas, but actually this is working, it is working well, I'm in control. The only downside is that it is quite a slow process to manufacture the plugs. Then once we've cut it down to a rough tube, we then take our cutter and we're just going to slowly but surely turn it around as you would a pencil in a pencil case. Now we do want to go slowly and controlled with this. We don't want to plug it into a drill and rip it through, because we're working over the grain, so I want to be able to feel if it starts to bind up or snag. I want to be able to feel if the blades start getting blunt. I could use sockets, clip it into the end, plug it into the back end of a drill, clamp this up and then just rip it through, but what's likely to happen then is the teeth of the cutter, as it's moving around the wood, is going to start to catch in the grain and lift sections of it out. There's an example there of what I mean. So the blade can come around, it can catch the edge of the grain and just simply lift it off. And because we're working all the way around the grain, that could happen anywhere. So we do want to be very slow and careful with this, and want to ensure that the cutter blades are very, very sharp. So we've been producing plugs. As I said already, time consuming, a bit labour intensive, but I think they are the right thing for the job. Next step is to actually install them into the boat, and for that we need the reaming tool. Looks a little bit like that. Nice and sharp, and more importantly is it's flat, it is sharpenable, so we can keep the edge on that as well. We'll make a tapered hole in the planking, tap to plug in. And as I mentioned already, I am going to use glue. Now, controversially, I am going to use something like this. The equivalent in the States would be a tight bond type of thing. PVA type of, this is not actually PVA, but it's that type of thing. And as I said earlier, the reason for that is we don't need something bomb-proof. Okay, the plug itself should actually seal in the hole because it's an identical taper. The cutter and the reamer are exact angles, they match perfectly. So there shouldn't be any gaps needing filled in there, so we can do away with any kind of epoxies. Epoxies are always going to be hard, they're brittle, and they will cause damage to the planking, so I can't really use that. Resorcinol should be completely applicable here. We could use that, it would give us a very solid join. But because these are tapered, we don't need it to be bomb-proof, so we don't need to spend the money on a resorcinol type of glue just now. This stuff, I've read some very good things about it. I've seen it used in a number of applications where it has been surprisingly effective. But in my head, the most redeeming factor of this glue is that it will remain flexible and it will remain workable. So even long after the plug has been put into the boat, if we needed to then remove that plug, if it wasn't doing the right job, or if we started to see cracks opening up, we would be able to get that plug out of there without damaging the rest of the planking. So I think that's quite an important reason to use something simple. I mean, we could probably get away with just putting this in with nearly nothing on it and we would have a decent seal. This will just give us that extra additional protection against water ingress. It will also line the grain, the edge of the grain there, and try and seal that a little bit better as well. Another option would be pine tar. I could dip that in some pine tar and I'm pretty certain that that would give us a pretty bomb-proof seal as well. But I'm going to play a little bit on the modern side of things and I'm going to use something like this D4 stuff. Again, there are other types of glue like that will do the job. I know the States have an equivalent Tight Bond 3, I want to say. Don't slag me for getting that wrong, but that's what I've heard. So the next step is to just whack some of the white stuff on this and get it into the boat. As you can see, we've been plugging away quite happily on the port side here, and a number of planks are going to be getting repaired and moved on this side, so we don't need to plug every single hole. So that means for our example piece here that I'm going to film, it's actually going to be right down here in the turn of the bilge, so apologies for any kind of awkward angles or low lighting. So this bit of planking here, we have a fairly nasty hole, and quite simply pop that into the existing hole and we just want to open it out. Take it out nice and gently, and as you can see I've got little markers on this, that gives me an approximate idea as to the depth so I don't go too deep. So I have a shallow marker first. Have a wee peek in, make sure that we're getting rid of all the destroyed wood, all the rotten wood, and it's nice and clean on there. Test out our plug, see where we're sitting. We can afford to go a wee bit deeper with that. I've left this one quite big. We can go quite a bit narrower, go down to about 3/8 with this cutter if we needed to. But the more wood I remove, the better it's going to be. And that is now just above flush with the planking on the inside, so that's good. Give it a wee wiggle, feels nice and tight. Yeah, as a friction joint, that's pretty good actually. Whack out our controversial glue and simply slap it on. It's just a contact adhesive, so you don't need to wait for anything. You just stick it on, give it a wiggle so it's nice and coated. And smear the holes all the way around, in with the plug. Give that a wee chap with a little hammer so it's nice and tight, and that's it for that plug. That's all we need to do. Once that's set and hard, we'll cut off the ends so I don't accidentally break them and shear the grain on the inside of the holes. We'll cut them to make them nice and neat and manageable before we then go on to the finishing phases of that. In the meantime, it's just carry on along the same line. It's a long drawn out process. We've got in the region of 37 of these to make on each side. Some of them can be repaired with little dowels, so that's great. And once that's done, that's largely the outside part of this repair completed. We'll then jump back inside the boat and we'll have a look at some of the Geralds or the graving pieces that we have to do. We'll have a look at that right now. So that gives you a chance just to see what we've got. So most of the plugging up in this corner here is actually cosmetic, bar the main holes. So there's been some additional fastenings going through this. So those plugs aren't going to be doing anything structural. Doesn't look too pretty, I'll grant you. There's a lot of plugging going on there, but it's the best we can do with what we have just now. So carry on around and down, you can see where we've managed to plug the holes for the floors, and the other side going up here. Other side over here we obviously have our Geralds in. So if we jump down in here and have a look at these Gerald repairs, oversized obviously, need to be planed down nice and flush. The same with all the rest of the plugging, need to get planed down. This one here is actually quite a bit deeper and larger than expected, so in all likelihood this may end up being a repaired plank, especially if we see similar damage on the other frames. It's possible to repair this one at the moment, but it's right on the edge. Okay, it's not entirely happy with it, so this may well end up being another plank getting replaced. That's a plank getting replaced obviously as well. Minor Geralds to go in as well around here, just to sort of sort these things out. Now I have used epoxy for the Geralds, the reason being that I want something absolutely bomb-proof. Epoxy is one of the strongest glues you can get, so that's the reason I've chosen that. I don't want these falling out willy-nilly. It is very hard and it can be very brittle, so as the plank swells and contracts, there is a chance that we could see some gaps opening up here. That should be minimal for this area, because the plank and the plug can swell away from each other. So if you imagine you have your glue line in the middle, that hand there is the glue line. The planking can swell that way and the planking can swell that way, independent of each other. They're not getting pressed up and compressing the actual Gerald. So all we've got really to do here before we actually fit the frames is a little bit of Gerald repair, planing everything flush and smooth, and then giving it the pine tar treatment that we did with the steamed frames. So we should be able to get these frames in very, very soon. Unsurprisingly, carving graving pieces into this part of the planking is rather difficult. It's a curved surface and there are ribs in the way to stop any kind of smooth movement of a router or something like that. So I found that the quickest and easiest way to do it is actually old school chisels, just doing it by hand. It's something I've actually discovered quite a lot whilst I've been building this boat, is that the quickest and easiest way is quite often actually using traditional tools. For example, when I was hewing out the sawn frames, I found it a lot quicker to use the draw knife and an axe than it was to actually start feeding it through my bandsaw. Now granted, that is a tool issue that I have. My bandsaw is simply not of the proper shipwright quality. A bigger bandsaw would make short work of the oak that I've got there, but given the tools I had and have, hand tools are very, very effective. So that's what I've been doing in here. So a graving piece, there are numerous links to how to do these on YouTube, and I won't bore you to death with a tutorial on that. The basic crux of the whole operation is you make the plug first. As long as you make the plug first and using a marking knife to very carefully mark the exact size of the piece into the repair site, it's very difficult to go ridiculously wrong with it. Using sharp tools always, you'll be able to cut out that outline very, very quickly and very, very easily. And you can streamline it slightly by using a width of chisel that matches the width of the piece you're trying to repair as well. So all that goes together to make graving pieces actually very, very quick repairs. They're not actually as difficult as they look, I suppose. Well, I'm back aboard Idler this morning for the last day in a little while. I have a project coming up which is going to require my full attention for about the next 10 days or so. So rather than let you guys wait that time, I thought I'd speed up and try and get this episode out to you so you've got something to enjoy before we can get back into full swing with Idler. So with that in mind, we've not managed to get the frames in. Unfortunately, the sawn frames, they are still in progress. There's a lot of Geralds needing cut. At the moment we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this side, none over on the port side. It is quite slow going, to be fair, and we're going to have to do quite a lot of Geralding on the outside of the planking as well before we put any nails through. So we do want to take the time to get this squared away properly rather than rush it. So hence why I'm bringing this video forward a little bit. So we have the steamer on just now, and we've got another 5 ribs going to be going in immediately, and there's another 2 up forward which need cut and prepped, but the site's on already, so we'll maybe get them in today as well. So I do apologise for not managing to get the frames in. It was my hope, I never promised, but it was my hope that we managed to get that far. Unfortunately, the way the cards have landed, we haven't been able to do that. That's largely down to the gift of Second Haven. Now that is largely down to the gift that is the Second Haven, which obviously required immediate attention to get her onto her new mooring, get ourselves sorted out with insurance and paying fees and blah 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 blah, getting her shifted and surveying, and then I actually had to dig in my own mooring for her as well. So that required what free time I did have dedicated out there. So great fun, very glad to have her, but that's obviously set back the Idler project just a tiny bit. But I still think we're doing quite well. We're doing reasonably well, especially with all this new timber. We are moving ahead steadily, so quite pleased with our progress anyway just now. So pleased to say that we're marching ahead with our frames. That's a good number of pairs in there. Once I get the ends roved over, I can start removing the remaining ones, and then that will hopefully be us finished with the steamed ribs in the very near future. Obviously our sawn frames are going to be ongoing, and they're going to be ongoing for the foreseeable future. There is obviously a lot of work required in it. We're plugging both sides, we're Geralding on top of those as well, plus the actual cutting and shaping and fairing of the frames themselves. So the reframing process is still ongoing. And with that in mind, I'll bring you an episode shortly with the installation of this frame that we've kind of been following through the last few episodes, including the floor. And then there's likely to be a little bit of a pause whilst I start working my way forward. I will bring you regular updates, but we're going to be largely doing the same thing that we've done over previous episodes, and it's just going to be kind of repeat. So instead of boring you to death with that, there may be slightly longer delays between episodes. I will of course keep you updated if anything new happens. If I go and build something random, if I just on a whim decide to build a rudder or something, then obviously I'll then turn that into an episode rather than just keeping you in the dark. Obviously I do want to keep you guys involved in this process. Okay, so we've just about completed our trip. That's the mouth of the harbour just ahead of us. The wind's coming straight out of the mouth, so it's going to be a bit difficult to get straight in. Just tiny little tack, so the motor's gone on and the sails have come down, I'm afraid. Not very traditional, not very cool, but very efficient. And there's our little Aunt Agatha at the back there. She's quite happy. And here she is, the Second Haven. Like I say, a little bilge keeler, so sitting on our drying mooring just now. So she needs a little bit of cosmetic work, but the hull's sound and bone dry, which is nice. He's obviously anti-foul and all the rest of it. And I really love St Monans Harbour. St Monans Harbour is just beautiful. Love the old fishing boat here. Well, that's it from us just now. Anyway, all the best from me. Thank you so much to every single one of you out there who are watching, sharing and subscribing to this channel. I can't thank you enough, it's fantastic. Thank you so much to Mr. D once again for your incredibly generous donation, and thank you so much to every single one of you subscribers out there, because you are absolutely otherworldly fantastic, and I cannot say thank you enough to you. So that's it from me, an idler. Take it easy for now, and thanks for watching.